Good morning and good afternoon. Welcome to our webinar today, How Consistent Project Management Can Make Your Company. We're going to start today by doing some introductions, and then we'll go ahead and run through the agenda. Again, I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time out today. We're going to run about 45 minutes, and we want to leave that time near the end at the 40-minute mark for your questions and answers. My name is Jim O'Farrell. I'm a Senior Product Marketing Manager here at Smartsheet, and again, welcoming you to this event. I'd also like to introduce Rajiv Rankandram, who's our Director of Enterprise Marketing. Good morning, Rajiv.
Morning, Jim.
Our agenda today covers several topical areas. One is a discussion around PMO challenges, and in particular, the focus is on functional scale and how to deal with that. We're going to have a poll, and then we're going to continue on and have a little bit deeper dive into some of these recommendations that we're coming forth with Smartsheet. We'll have a demonstration, and then we'll wrap it up with some best practice sharing and implementation considerations, and we'll have a second poll at that time. As many of you know, Smartsheet is well known for its collaborative work management platform. It's used for tracking information, for reporting, and for automating. And many of you are very aware of these various different functional benefits. Today our focus is on scale and how to scale solutions in this particular environment. Many times people think of scale in terms of users. That's number of users. For example, one of our largest customers, there's literally 100,000 of their customers using our solution. Sometimes people think of scale in terms of administrative scale. That is, handling administration privileges, security, and so on across a number of users. Today our focus is on functional scale. And what we mean by functional scale is how can you consistently roll out a business process or a particular unit of work for a series of business users or business center. Now, it may sound easy, but let's talk a little bit about some of the obstructions that people encounter when it comes to functional scale. Now, I've had the privilege in these last couple of weeks and months to spend time on the phone and meeting with and talking with and interviewing a wide range of PMO VP directors and discussing with them their challenges as it relates to this PMO environment. And to boil it down, there are a series of these, and you can see them listed on the screen. And we're going to ask you about what you see in terms of these challenges. So, for example, we're talking about challenges relating to a changing business environment. One of our interviews revealed a director who revealed to me that his operation, which was a $170 million operation, just got acquired by a $2 billion operation. So that resulted in a significant number of changes in his operating environment. So these kinds of changes are that's one small example. I think every single one of you on the line here can relate to a changing business environment. It happens every day. It happens here at Smartsheet. We just raised $52 million, and that's had a distinct effect on our business and our planned growth. Well, all of these changes affect processes, and processes then have to change and adapt. And then what happens there is a related effect on tools. Tools have to adapt. And oftentimes the tools we have are rigid, or they're used in a siloed environment, and there's many different types of them, and it's very hard to share that information. On the sort of process side of it, you got multiple methods and multiple ways of getting things done, and those are done from PM to PM or from organization to organization or department to department. Again, all of these rigidities, tools, and methods and processes, all up to maybe a key challenge that I heard over and over again during these interviews, and that is we have poor visibility. We can't see what's going on in our portfolio. We can't see what's going on with our programs. So it makes it very difficult then to make business decisions, and it truly affects the operation of the organization. The question that we have, we'll go ahead and launch the poll, is that what do you find most challenging about managing your PMO at scale? So we have a fairly significant number of you that have voted on this. Let's go ahead and share those results out. And what we can see here is leading the pack by 2/3 is this notion of multiple project methods and processes. So people out there are finding that 2/3 of you are finding that this is really creating a lot of challenges for you in terms of being able to scale your business operations. Second to that, interestingly enough, is the changing business environment, like the example I just shared, followed closely by poor visibility into program status. Well, thank you so much for sharing those insights and helping us to acquaint us with you and your concerns as we go into this. Now, as we get back into the presentation here, I want to make sure that we remind you we are here to answer your questions. So please, take the time to ask your questions as we get into this a little bit more deeply here. So I want to talk a little bit now about remedy. So what can we do about it, or what is being done about it? So typically today, the usual approach is really to standardize all these processes, methods, and tools. And this requires a lot of rigidity, a lot of conformity. The problem with that, there's a couple problems with that actually. The first problem is that it's kind of like putting a straitjacket on as far as your users. We're really forcing our users to think like the PPM system of choice. We're forcing them to do things that are not natural to them in terms of getting their business done. And what happens with that is that we end up spending, we as in leadership and management, end up investing in training and further tools and so on. And actually in this example here, 2.6x is spent on every dollar invested in these tools, because this is an ongoing repetitive process to force these users to get to use these environments. And we see a lot of this. We have a lot of people come to us because of this particular challenge. The second challenge, back to business processes. They keep changing. And the reason this becomes an issue is when we think about PPM solutions and their complexity, it's a lot like an ERP system. They take months, if not years, to implement correctly. And if you then, by the time you get that implemented and deployed, your PMO process actually can change. Well, what happens a lot of time, and look at this statistic, 50% of the time PMO leadership leaves those processes as is, and they become thought of as overhead. So it just adds to the baggage and the weight of these particular systems. So our premise today, and the reason why we're here at this webcast, is we want you to think more about this in terms of an idea that is revolving around consistency. Examples of what we mean by consistency is creating a standard budget tracking system, if you will, and you would have a series of templates in that system with controlled data entry for project codes and accounting codes. What we want to do here is couple that strict control and template creation with the flexibility that we can give to our end users. Let's give the users the ability to update information using simple drop-down selectors, or give them the ability to add additional columns, to make changes, to adapt those templates to the way they work. And by doing so, we overcome that problem that we talked about with the users being caged in. Now, if we think about consistency and its impact on functional scale, we can start to think about it and apply it across the entire project lifecycle, this idea of consistency. In other words, placing guardrails in your project lifecycle where it matters and providing flexibility for high levels of user adoption. So for example here, on the project intake and prioritization, one of the areas that was a big concern with one of the interviewees that I had was this ability to prioritize projects. And her challenge was that she did not have a consistent way of being able to prioritize projects and get those into the system. Everybody's project was a priority. So that was a concern to her. So their consistency would have really helped that person out. Team collaboration. I spoke to an EVP of IT and PMO and mentioned his biggest concern was the lack of user adoption. Because team collaboration is so essential to the success of a good PMO program, this is an area too where we need to be thinking about consistency and the importance of consistency. I could go on, but I think you probably get the gist of it. It's important to not only have consistency in one aspect of your organization, strategy and vision, but all across all aspects of your project lifecycle. And so what we're doing here at Smartsheet, and what we've been working on these last 18 to 24 months, is bringing this world of flexibility and ease of use that you're so familiar with. In fact, we get on order of about 1 million logins every 30 days, and it's an amazing statistic when you think about the number of people that are interacting with Smartsheet today. It's a real testimony to the flexibility and ease of use. So our goal in this last 24 months is how do we take that and combine it with the ability to apply standards and controls so that you can functionally scale your solutions? Well, the answer is a solution we call Smartsheet Control Center, and that's what this point of this whole webinar is about, is how can we take Smartsheet Control Center, this automation solution, and enable organizations to scale their operations. So I'm going to really quickly just walk through this diagram that we're going to have a demonstration of this live in action. On the left-hand side, you notice a large pyramid. This pyramid represents a project type. For example, it could be a client implementation or a customer onboarding project type. At the bottom of the pyramid, you have a series of sheets that relate to customer onboarding. For example, a project plan. You might have a budget tracker. You might have an issue tracker. Each of those are separate sheets, if you will, across the bottom row here that I'm highlighting. Notice these arrows going both ways. That shows that these sheets are interlinked. Now what we have on top of the sheets, we have a series of reports. These reports are also integrated with a variety of different sheets. For example, in that customer onboarding example, we could have an issues report that pulls information from the budget tracker, from the issue tracker, and from the project plan and merges that on a per project manager basis. And we can have n number of reports that are geared towards that in this one project type. And finally, what we have is a dashboard that's related to all these aforementioned reports and sheets. Now with the Control Center, what we can do is take all these components that are interlinked with all their various different linkages between sheets and reports and combine that with metadata or information about that particular project type. And that metadata examples could be project manager, it could be project location, it could be project codes, it could be hard costs, soft costs, whatever that metadata is about. Combine that and replicate that for each and every project. So let's say you're doing 200 client onboarding sessions a year. You could create 200 of these various different pyramids with their associated dashboards, reports, and sheets with all their links and the metadata. And on top of that, have that each time you create, update aggregated reports and dashboards. So Smartsheet Control Center really helps you to automate and scale in a functional manner, giving you consistency where it matters and flexibility for high user adoption. So I'm going to finish it right at the moment. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Rajiv, and Rajiv's going to walk us through a highlight of what we're going to demonstrate here. Rajiv?
Thanks, Jim. So much like how Jim talked about the concept of repeatability and making sure that you can manage to initiate projects at scale, but also drive that end user flexibility so that the actual project management is still flexible for the projects that you're going to provision, right? So today what we're going to walk through is a scenario in an IT PMO context where someone in the business group is going to submit a web form. They're going to submit a new IT request for a project that's going to go into the overall IT demand management queue. In the demand management queue, we're going to show you how we can have a multi-stage approval process. So we're going to start with the request being fully validated, then it goes to the initiative or the segment lead approving it, then the director approving it. Once the project is approved, we take the concept of that project, all of the metadata and the context that came with it, and use it to provision your actual projects. And that's where the pyramid diagram that like Jim talked about comes into play to say, we're going to take what you have defined as your ideal project process and create a new project using that. That then drives the team collaboration for the actual project management process, but it also then drives a portfolio level summary reporting and overall IT dashboards, and then we'll actually walk into a Power BI example to show you how you can drive deeper insights from that. Okay, so we're going to kind of start at the end, and what you're looking at here is the overall IT PMO dashboard. This is, for those of you who don't know, Smartsheet Dowell. This is driven through a product in our app that's called Sites, which is our dashboarding technology. And it's a simple widget-driven experience that allows you to mix and match and create your ideal dashboards. So in this particular dashboard, we're looking at, there's 138 total projects, 82 of them are live. It tells you where we stand on budget allocation. It also gives you a sense of, based on the key initiatives we're tracking within the IT discipline, how these projects are spread. So there's 2 projects in the business intelligence initiative. There is 9 in the EPMO. There's 17 in IT audit. It kind of gives you a sense of like the budget plan and the issues and all of that stuff at a high level. So let's start at the beginning and actually go through the entire flow. We said we're going to start with someone in the business group submitting a new request. So they come in and fill out this simple web form that we have created for IT project requests. So in this example, we're saying there is a product Z, that should say product, right? Product Z is queue tracking. Glenn is the one who's making the request. The request is in the BI space, and it's to add like a new BI process. All of the elements within this are actually required elements. Once you go and hit submit, that then automatically comes into our overall demand management queue. So there's a new request that came in, so let me hit refresh, and we'll kind of take a quick peek at this. So in here, we're looking at it in a card view context. So this is showing you the initial approval process and showing you all of the projects that are in here. So let me actually expand this a little bit and take a look at what's in the product Z queue tracking. When I go in and look at this, it kind of looks like the success metric is TBD. So let me do a really quick ping and talk to Glenn about this. So I can start a Skype conversation from him using Skype for Business integration from right within the app. And as I make conversations with him, this is actually getting recorded right back into the discussions that you saw here. Once we agreed on the principles of like why this is a required approval, I can just simply take it and move it to the project approved state. Right. Once this is done, this is actually going to trigger an automatic alert to the next level person to actually go and approve. So right here, let me apply filters at the bottom. Actually, I'm going to look at the new entry that's right at the bottom of this list. I'm going to say this is a 2-person level effort. This is now going to kick off an approval request to the segment lead who's going to approve it. And we have these conditional notifications set up that when a segment lead is when a segment lead completes approval, it'll send me an email once a day to say, I have something to go approve. So when I come in, I can just simply go in and say, show me all the segment approved things that are waiting for my approval. And I can go and simply hit yes to it. Once all the 3 approvals are checked, we have a condition here that automatically makes the overall project approval ready. And this is driven through a simple set of formulas. So you can make this as complicated or as simple as you need it to be. Now this is where Control Center kicks in. We're going to go in and say we're going to start a new IT project. We're going to pick an PMO approved IT project. And this is the pyramid diagram that Jim was referencing. So there's a set of project plans, budget sheets, an internal project hub, which think of it as the PowerPoint that you create on a weekly basis to send out the summary of where the project stands, except for this is real time and always live. We also have a set of optional elements for issue tracker and enhancement logs. This is where we then go in and pick the actual new project. So I see product Z queue tracking has shown up here. And it's actually bringing in all of the context of that original request right into your project right here. So you can see that the original requester was Glenn. It's part of the BI department. The level of effort is stated here. I'm going to move this from a proposed stage to a live stage. We're going to override the requested date, which was supposed to be tomorrow. I'm going to move it to next Monday. And all of the rest of the data is actually coming right back in. And this allows us to take the context that was created right at the start of the project in the request and pass it into the project and also into the exec summary dashboard so that the same data is going through the entire funnel. So at any point you want to look at how many requests came in and what happened to them, you can actually do that analysis. But you can also do the analysis to go say what happened to a particular project and how long did it take to go from one stage to the next to the next. And so you can actually do a lot more deeper analytics by actually tying everything from the request all the way through the end dashboard. So this is going to take a couple of minutes to run. I'm actually finished. So let me kind of jump in here. And what you're going to see is a workspace where we've taken the base of the template, and so if I switched over to this side of it, we took all of the elements that were in this IT project folder. So you can see we have an enhancement log and issue tracker. So we have 7 different elements. We took all of those, and instead what we provisioned was 6 different things where the 6 different elements that were requested were actually provisioned, and the labels of those elements were actually changed based on the naming conventions that was decided for the project plan. Now let me jump into the project plan so you can kind of see this a little bit. So we have all of the metadata that we requested is right on top of this list, right? So the name of the project, who the requester is, what department is it aligned to, all of that data is actually coming in, as you can see, through cell links from the demand management IT projects. It's also linking us to our overall IT project summary sheet, which we will take a look at in a second. Inside this actual plan, and this is where you can actually define how you want this to work. Inside the actual plan, we have a skeleton of a plan in an IT project context. And we chose to do a skeleton of a plan because all we want every project to do is to have these 3 milestones represented: a planning milestone, an execution milestone, and a closeout milestone. Within that, we are actually letting each of the project managers define how they want to run their actual projects. You can actually be extremely prescriptive and have the super locked down, or you can keep it fairly open and generic like this, and that option is left up to you. The one advantage of actually running a process like this is, let me make this yellow so we can see a change, is as a project manager, when I come in, I can decide I actually need to track this based on, I want to track this based on swim lanes, and I'm going to create like a new set of swim lanes. So I'm going to say backlog in progress and done. And one of the new options, if you notice, that we released fairly recently is this option to restrict values only to drop-down values. And what that does is actually prevents you from typing any random other data because it'll actually restrict it. So from driving data integrity, that actually allows you to like drive even more control within the process today. And this then can actually be managed as can be managed fairly easily now using like a card view kind of system. So you've now created an agile process rather than just a waterfall-driven project plan. Once the project is fully provisioned, it also drives the data from those particular project elements automatically into this IT project summary sheet. So let me refresh this, and then we'll go take a look at the BI section, which had two projects in flight, and see if that got updated. Yep. So now we have 3 projects in flight. All 3 are in the live camp, and you can see that we have this new product Z-SKU tracking. And if I go click on this link, it'll take me right back to where we started from. But it's bringing in that the status of the project is yellow, it's live, 2% effort. If we actually had status updates, that will show up here inside. So it kind of brings all of the data from the issue tracker, the budget sheets, the overall set of flow right into this particular list. And what this really allows us to do is take this data and render dashboards that are fairly compelling and create like real-time views for your executive team right in here. So you can see that it got updated. We now have 139 projects. We have 3 in the business unit, in the BI track. This also allows us to fairly easily like use this as a jump-off point to go into a Power BI dashboard, which actually shows us all of the different projects that are in flight. So if I go in and refresh this, we'll see 3 new projects that show up inside my business intelligence projects tracker. So I give that a second to load. And what this really allows us to do is take the data, not only the data of what is happening to the project, the what behind the project status, and combine it with data that's potentially coming from other systems so you can drive deeper insights into, are you actually allocating budget in the right places, right? So if I looked at this, IT transformation is a really big bet. We are apparently spending almost no money, even though we have potentially 9 different projects that are running for IT transformation. So it allows you to like do rebalancing activities and like drive deeper insights into it. It also allows you to fairly easily go down and see where you're spending the most amount of money, how your resource allocation is spread across the different people, and really quickly then dive in from here to say, okay, let me take a look at what the 10 projects are that Keith is working on and where they land up across the spectrum. Right. So being able to like do deeper analysis on top of the project is actually one of the cool advantages of actually connecting the data that is coming out of the summary or metadata for every project and driving that into an aggregate dashboard like this. With that, Jim, do you have questions?
Before we go off of it, Rajiv, we're getting lots of questions in, by the way. Thank you so much for that. Mesa asked a good question. She was asking about how you actually got to the control center. So I think just to point it out, Mesa, the control center is actually a separate application. And so what Rajiv did is you'll actually go to the PMO control center. For example, we are now on screen. You're looking at the control center application. And I think it ties to another question in that there was a question to the effect, Rajiv, of, I've got my project set up, I've got my report set up, and I'm doing this, essentially by hand. Mm-hmm. And I think what we're saying here, and you could, elaborate a bit on this, is that we're actually automating that. So we're taking that collection of reports and dashboards and so on, and we configure them, and we can actually take Control Center and lay that on top of existing templates and use the Control Center to automate the generation of that. And not only that, but how about from the point of view of updating summary reports and so on too, not only just your dashboards, but summary reports.
Yeah, I mean, for those of you that are really familiar with Smartsheet today, and this is true for Smartsheet, and this is also true for a lot of PPM kind of solutions, is often the project manager becomes the glue that holds the project together. And what I mean by that is the project manager is the one person that then knows, here's the data I need to collect from this people, it's going to come into this system, okay, I need to manually transform it to this other place, and then I have to manually go create this other kind of report. And there's a lot of, even though the systems are built to actually create these endpoints within Smartsheet, like the sites are already there, but to get the data from the project into that summary report so you can report on site, today that's a series of manual steps that someone takes to actually go create those cell links or manually copy the data over from one location to the other. What Control Center allows you to do is to take that notion of consistency across the entire project lifecycle, which begins with how do you consistently take an intake or the demand request, how do you prioritize and approve it, and take that approval automatically into the project and then into the summary dashboards. Control Center will also eventually allow you to go back into these projects and say, I want to edit the project information, I want to add more template, make it like really, really easy for ongoing maintenance as you think about like the overall life cycle of the project itself.
Two more questions came in here, Rajiv, from Pierre and Marjan, and they're relating to the same thing. They were curious about those charts that you put up on screen, and they're wondering how those were created. Are they creatable in Smartsheet? And if you need additional licensing to create these charts.
Okay. So what we are using here is Microsoft Power BI. So if you're an Office 365 customer, you already have access to Microsoft Power BI, and we have a native integration within Power BI to be able to point it to any sheet or report within the Smartsheet app. You can also alternatively use Tableau, Domo, pretty much most data visualization software, including Excel, and we have a ODBC connector that you can actually use to connect the different data visualization tools with the Smartsheet data that you actually have in your system.
Okay, we've got a lot of time left too, so continue to get those questions in. We want to have a poll right now, and I'm going to go ahead and switch back to our other screen here. And the poll we have now, we're going to go ahead and launch the poll, is after listening to the introduction and viewing the demonstration, what do you see as having the most positive impact on your PMO? Daniel, how are we looking on
I think we're just about ready here. We're going to close this poll, and I'll show you guys the wonderful results.
Okay, great. So, and this is totally in line. After doing those interviews, what many of you are saying, it's the visibility, it's the reporting, it's the dashboards that you see as being most impactful. And I think that's a reflection of the audience here in terms of your interest in providing business decision makers with what's going on at any time, real time with our portfolio, followed closely by, again, prioritizing the projects and then the teamwork aspect. So thanks again for completing that particular poll. And I've got just one or two more points that we'd like to make, and then we'll open it up for further questions and answers. And again, please ask those here real time. Many people say, okay, well, that makes a lot of sense, Jim and Rajiv, what you're saying here. But, you know, tell me a little bit more about this value. Let's quantify the value that we've got here. So I think before we do that, we need to think of value in terms of a few items. One is there's definitely time efficiency associated with this control center approach to managing your projects, your portfolio, your programs. And what I mean by that, you get the significant reduction in manual effort, as we've illustrated here. We're really taking a lot of the time out of connecting those sheets and those dashboards and aggregate reports and summary reports. But not only, you know, reducing the amount of time, think about it from another angle. Rajiv showed how data flowed from systems of record like enterprise systems. They could be Oracle, it could be SAP, it could be Salesforce, information flowing into this intake sheet, and then being able to use the intake sheet for workflow approvals, and then actually instantiating the project, and then having that data go back to the enterprise system of record, that full round loop. Well, what my point there is, that data only gets entered one time and is reused through the system. And because of that, you get a very high quality of data. And high quality data means better decisions and better business results because you've got consistency and high quality data. And it reduces your risk, bottom line. We already talked a lot about enhanced visibility, so I won't hit that. But the final point there, integrated and automated work, that goes back to this whole notion of let's take the manual pieces out of this. Let's take it and automate it and make it super efficient so you can take and your team can take their valuable time and focus more on strategic challenges and so on. Now, so how do we translate that into actual monetary benefit? So our team here is geared, and we've worked with a lot of large customers that are deploying Control Center, have it deployed. And what we do is we'll work closely with you to determine the actual business value that's associated with this. First, we start by defining what are your key challenges and articulating those. And then we help you with establishing key goals so you can measure yourself in terms of achieving those goals. We describe the impact areas, and what we get it down to is the time savings and risk reduction percentages based on our ROI analysis. In this example, you can see for each employee that's engaged in your PMO, can gain, it looks like here, at least a 10%, if not more so, savings per week per employee. And if you're looking at an employee who's pulling in 180,000 fully loaded on an annualized basis, those numbers can really start adding up quickly. And of course, the risk reduction is significant too. So we want to make sure that you understand this is just not some kind of technical feature solution. This is driving real business value, real time, right now. Okay? So before we get into questions and answers, if you would like to get more information about what you've just heard here in these last 40 minutes, contact us at solutions@smartsheet.com. We can help you with discovery. We can help you define your requirements. We can do more of a directed demonstrations to your particular solutions and data. We can help you with assessing the business value associated with us. We can help you with scoping this. So we're here to help you, both Rajiv and myself and our team of service and support and sales professionals here at Smartsheet. So with that said, I think what we'll do is we'll switch into some questions and answers. And I think we'll start it off by asking the question, and I think I can answer this one. Do we have access to the Control Center under our enterprise license? Kate, thanks for asking that question. Really appreciate it. Again, Control Center is a separate product, so it has a separate annual subscription associated with it. So to acquire it, we'll talk to you separately one-on-one about what the configuration of that takes and so on, and help you with pricing that particular license for you. It also entails a certain amount of configuration, and we like to say configuration, not customization, because we're talking in getting this implemented within hours and days, not weeks and months. It's very, very straightforward to get it implemented within your environment. So, Kate, thank you for that question, and if you like, we can circle back with you and get more details and understand a little bit more about your requirements. Rajiv, did you have a question coming up?
Yeah, so there's probably 3 or 4 questions where different people want to know a deeper follow-up so they kind of understand how this would fit for their particular scenario. Do you have a recommendation on what the best path is for them to do that?
Absolutely. I think what we can do for you to get more details about how this would apply to your business and to do this discussion around discovery and demonstrations and so on, there's 2 aspects to it. You could either email solutions@smartsheet.com or expect one of your account executive, I should say, to follow up with you within the next 2 working days in terms of what you learned at this webcast, what was important to you, and that account executive can manage and can help you with getting the right resources and answering your questions and setting up demonstrations and getting more information and insights. Okay? Daniel, do we have another question?
Yeah, earlier there was an interesting question that came in about the configuration process and how how much Smartsheet will do. So maybe if you just explain a little bit about our consulting team and what that engagement looks like.
Okay, in terms of a kind of a typical consulting project?
Yeah. They were curious just about what it takes to get set up with Control Center.
Yeah, so typically think of it, there's about a day and a half or 2-day working with you and your templates in terms of configuring the environment. And then there's also training that's associated with that too. Our goal in anything that we do here is to do the knowledge transfer over to you. So as you go forward with Control Center, then you're able to add your own templates and create, again, your additional project types and so on and so forth. So it's, like I say, it's probably something like an elapsed time of a week in terms of the overall getting in, getting things configured, getting the team trained, and so on and so forth. Okay? We had another question here. Did you get a question there, Rajiv, coming in?
There's a question on how Smartsheet can integrate with other PM tools. And I can take this one. So in terms of integration with other PM tools, the best way to think about the scenario that we described today is the actual work back schedule and the plan element actually sits within Smartsheet, and we can drive deeper collaboration on the actual planning and the execution of that plan process. If you want to integrate and report up into high-level tasks and milestones into other systems, we have a fairly robust API structure that you can use to drive that integration. We also have a lot of native capabilities to export and import data from Smartsheet into other PM tools or the other way around. So that would be the process to actually get it integrated with other PM tools.
Okay. Cynthia asked a good question here. What were the actual products that were shown here today? So let me see if I can take a stab at this, Rajiv, and if I miss anything, let me know. So Cynthia, the first, what you saw in the demonstration, we started with sites. So that's the name of our dashboard solution. And then what we did is we went into Smartsheet itself, and we showed how the forms capability in Smartsheet was used to populate the intake sheet, which is also a component of your Smartsheet platform. From there, after Rajiv did the approval process, what he did is he then went into another product called Smartsheet Control Center. That's what we've been talking about quite a bit here. And he used Control Center to actually take that information that came in on that web form in the intake sheet and create a new instance of that project based on that data. And so that's what Control Center did. Control Center automated it and created all the different reports and dashboards and sheets associated with that. Then, as that was generated, he went back into Smartsheet and he showed the various different workspaces that were created in the folders and sheets and so on, and also the dashboards that were created. The last piece of this he showed was how you could use Smartsheet to actually integrate data into Power BI or any, frankly, for any that matter, any sort of BI tool where that integration point is. So those were the series of products that you saw there in that particular demonstration. Rajiv, was there anything else on that?
No, I think that's it. So,
Got it?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see now. We had a question. If I want to communicate with a coworker on information inserted in Smartsheet, will Smartsheet alert him to his external email, or will he have to be logged into Smartsheet to see that I've left a comment for him? Monisha, thank you for that question. Rajiv, you want to just
Yes.
Go ahead.
So you can set up the alerting in a couple of different ways. Within Smartsheet, you can actually set up an alert so that they get notified every time there is a change. There's a couple of things you have to do to make that alert actually work. You have to make sure that you have a contact column and you actually have they are shared to the underlying sheet. They do not have to log in to receive the alert, but they need to be shared to the underlying sheet. You could also have a Skype-based conversation where you could actually click on the person and have a conversation with them directly in Skype at that point, which is kind of the demo that we showed, and that will save it also into the comments, but like every reply that you do into that Skype channel automatically gets them to be notified on their Skype instance. So there's a couple of different options that you have available to actually make that happen.
That's a great answer. I think we've got time for one more question here, and I'll take a stab at answering it here. And it's a good question. Boston, thank you for asking this question. How do requests come in for projects? So in this demo, I think you saw again how web forms, which are native form building tools within Smartsheet, were used to actually capture data and then populate the intake form. And remember, those forms can be used on a mobile device, Android, iOS device. So those can be deployed widely, and you don't have to have a license to actually use those forms too, just to point that out. Now, it's also important to, Boston, with that question you asked there, it's also important to think of collecting data. Let's think about where that data can come from. For example, you might have Salesforce.com in your environment, and you want to take data out of Salesforce and use that as a way to populate your project that you're going to generate in Control Center. So we have a Salesforce connector. It's a bidirectional integration that brings data from Salesforce into the Control Center environment, which is used to generate the project. And then as you update the projects, that data goes back to Salesforce. So it's a full round-trip experience. In fact, we have about 50-plus different integrations here at Smartsheet. And on top of that, we have an open API. And that open API really allows us to connect to a wide variety of systems. We have a Control Center customer that I was speaking with last night. They're actually connecting up to Oracle EBS to do financial updates from Smartsheet. what they're doing is each time they achieve a particular milestone, the revenue that's accrued to that particular milestone is updated to Oracle. So, Boston, that was a great question. I took it as an opportunity to explain how wide and deep our integrations can really be. Well, you know, as all good things must come to an end here, Rajiv, I guess this is the end of our webinar today. Thank you for carving time out. I'd like to thank the whole entire audience. It's been a great audience, tons of great questions. We look forward to doing more of these. In fact, next month we're going to be featuring actual customers that are doing these types of activities. So look for those invites in your inbox, and we look forward to continuing our discussion. Rajiv?
Nothing else to add. Thanks everyone for taking the time. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for coming in. Appreciate it.